Hi, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about our Unit 8, Day 3 notes, multiplying radical expressions. So multiplying radical expressions is actually going to be easier than adding and subtracting our radical expressions. So to multiply our radical expressions, one thing we do have to be careful with is that they have to have the same index. Now, we have all been talking about square roots. So if we have a square root times a square root, right? There's really a 2 there. We just don't usually write it, right? That would be okay. Things like cubed roots and cubed roots would be okay, or fourth roots and fourth roots, but we can't mix them together, okay? So that's just something we don't consider about. We're only going to be really considering square roots times square roots. So if I were, let's say I was given some sort of radical expression where I had something like a radical b times c radical d, right? So what I'm going to do, first thing, is I'm going to take the a and the c and I'm going to multiply the coefficients. And remember, that's just fancy for the outside numbers. All right, so I'm going to multiply the a times c. Now, the second thing I'm going to do, so I will have an a and a c, is we're going to multiply the radicands. And the radicands, remember, is just a fancy word for the inside, right? What's under the radical. So the b times d. So radical b times d, right? So I'm going to multiply all those things together. And then once I get that, I'm going to simplify. If it's necessary. We don't necessarily have to. Depends what kind of numbers we get. All right, so multiply the outside by the outside, inside by the inside. All right, so let's talk about some examples. So let's say I have something like radical 2 times radical 6. So there are no the numbers on the outside are 1 times 1, give me a 1. Now 2 times 6 is going to give me a radical 12. Now I'm going to break that radical down. So I'm going to break this down into radical 4 times radical 3, which gives me an answer of 2 radical 3. Now remember, I can check these answers. So if I go to my calculator and I take the square root of 2, square root, no, this doesn't want to do that. Okay. Well, I'm having a little technical difficulty with my calculator right now. All right, but you can try that on your own calculator. All right, example 2. Let's say I have 5 radical 3 times 2 radical 6. All right, so multiply the outside by the outside, inside by the inside. So 5 times 2 is going to give me 10. 3 times 6 is going to give me 18. So now I've got to break down radical 18. So my 10 comes down with it. That's going to give me a 9 and a 2. That one's perfect. So 10 times 3, radical 2. So now this is a 30 radical 2. All right, number 3. Let's say I have 8 radical 5 times 1/4 radical 15. So again, outside times the outside. So 8 times a 4th is going to give me 2. Inside times the inside. 5 times 15 is going to give me 75. So now let's break down radical 75. So that's 25 times 3. So now that's going to become a 5. So now I have 10 radical 3. So this is different than addition and subtraction because I'm multiplying. I'm doing the property first. Okay. All right, let's say I want to take and I want to do something like radical 6 squared. Well, remember, squaring means that I have two of them. So this is really radical 6 times radical 6, which turns out to be radical 36, which look at that. That ends up being 6. So we're going to notice something pretty special about this right here. This is an inverse operation. So putting something like the square root is really 6 to the 1/2 power. So when I square that, these two things right here are going to cancel, which is going to give me that 6 for an answer. All right, let's try another one. All right, let's say we're going to get some variables in here. So let's do 4x radical 5 times 3 radical 8x to the third. Okay, so again, outside times the outside. So that's going to give me 12x. And then we've got inside times the inside. So it's going to give me 40x to the third. All right, so now I have to simplify my 40x to the third. So 12x. Now, we've got a 40. Okay, so we got to think about what goes into a 40. So it's going to give me a radical 4 and a radical 10. Now we have an odd power here. So remember, that's an x squared and an x. So I ask myself which ones are perfect. You're perfect. You're perfect. So now I have a 12x times 2 times x. These guys are going to stay under the radical. That's going to give me a 24x squared radical 10x. All right, let's try another one. Let's say I have something like 2x radical 10, and I want to square it. So we said before, squaring means that I have two of them. So 2x radical 10 times 2x radical 10. So same as before, multiply the outsides. So that's giving me a 4x squared. Multiply the insides. 10 times 10 gives me 100. Square root of 100, though, is 10. So now this is 4x squared times 10, giving me 40x squared. All right. Now what happens if I have a binomial? All right, so let's try another one. Let's say we have something like radical 5 times 3 radical 2 times radical 5. So in this case, we need to distribute. So I've got radical 5 times the 3 radical 2, radical 5 times the radical 5. So the first one, there's a 1 here, remember? So this is going to give me 3 radical 10. Now radical 5 times radical 5, oh, I took that plus sign. It's going to give me a radical 25. Now square root of 25, we know is 5. So my answer then is 3 radical 10 plus 5, because I can't put them together. They're not like radicals. All right, let's try another one. Let's say we have 2 radical 3 times 4 radical 3 plus 5 radical 6. Okay, so I'm going to distribute again. So 2 times 4 is going to give me 8. 3 times 3 is going to give me radical 9. Now again, outside and outside. So 2 times 5 is going to give me 10. Inside, inside, radical 18. Now I'm going to break these down. Now this one right here is a perfect square. So this is just 8 times 3. There's 24. Now my 18, bring that 10 down. 18 is radical 9 times radical 2, which gives me a 3. So my answer then is 24 plus 30 radical 2. And remember, they're not like radicals, so they can't go together. All right, and our last example. What happens if I have something like 2 plus radical 3 times 6 plus radical 3? All right, so this time we got to double distribute. Okay, so 2 times 6 is going to give me 12. 2 times radical 3 is going to give me 2 radical 3. 6 times radical 3 is going to give me 6 radical 3. And radical 3 times radical 3 is going to give me radical 9. Now radical 9, we know, is actually equal to 3. So now our 3 and our 12 are going to make 15. And since this one and this one are like radicals, that's going to give me an 8 radical 3. And I'm all done. All right. Let me know if you have any questions, and I hope to see you guys soon.